risk is the intersection of impact and likelihood. So my line lately has been, my team is proficient in determining the likelihood of something happening, but we're not the best at determining the impact, right? And where it's the scale is. So instead of us doing kind of a thumb in the air, where do we think it falls in that matrix? We've been bringing in the business very heavily. So like privacy, compliance, and legal.
Welcome to the Risk Never Sleeps podcast, in which we learn about the people that are on the front lines delivering and protecting patient care. I'm Ed Gaudet, the host of our program, and today I am pleased to be joined by Adam Rosen, the Chief Information Security Officer at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. Welcome, Adam. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing well.
And I hear you're from Buffalo.
Yes.
How's the weather?
Weather right now is good, a little cool. Don't ask me any questions about the Bills because I won't be able to say anything intelligent about it.
How about the Sabres? You a hockey fan?
No, pretty much same position, honestly. I'll show up for games from time to time. Enjoy the stadium food, but
there you go.
That's about the extent of my sports participation.
Okay. Sounds like me. We'll probably get into what we did when we were kids. Were you D&D? Were you Dungeons and Dragons players?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Okay,
good. I mean, it's very much, a go sports ball.
Exactly. All right. Well, that was a little off the cuff, but we usually start with a little bit about you, your background, your current role, and your organization.
Sure. Currently, I am a Chief Information Security Officer at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. We are an NCI-designated cancer center. And that means that aside from our patient care mission, as far as, curing and treating cancer, we also have research areas and very heavy focus on cancer research and also on education. So those three combine our mission as far as it relates to cancer. So we're very focused on that particular area of medicine. We were the first NCI-designated cancer center in the U.S., if my memory is serving me. And then, as far as what got me here, before talking about too much about what I do, I've always been into computers. My father was a computer person, did sales. And I think the first computer we had in the house was a CompuColor, which nobody ever has heard of, it seems like, when I talk to people. But, predate. Then we got an Amiga. We moved up. And then, very early IBM laptop, back when it was a big box with a small screen.
Yeah.
And got me into like basic programming and just, fiddling and tinkering around. It was, just something I was always interested in. And so then, through high school and into college, the focus was computer science and engineering. Originally was going to be, start my own game studio. That was my original plan.
That's cool.
And then went into grad school and started getting into security there, at least theoretically. I went to work as an independent study on a security project that kind of wasn't what I was expecting. It was really around user behavior analytics in the, Sun environment and analyzing and detecting unusual activity patterns. It was written, I think, in Java, which was not my language at that point. And then I was familiar with, especially with the GUI programming. And I spent like 2 out of the 3 months of the semester tearing this apart, trying to understand how it worked because I couldn't figure it out. And it turned out all he did was UI stuff. And it wasn't me. It was like, I just figured I was missing something when I was tearing it apart. So that was my first security project that didn't really pan out the way it did. But from after grad school, I went to the Naval Undersea Warfare Center in Island. And, did some like ATM networking, but also did some work on firewalls with an allied submarine program there. So started getting more into like security and monitoring in that role. And I was there for about 3 years. And then we moved back to Buffalo. At that point, I started my own IT consulting company because I figured, it's easy. Just hang my shingle and everybody, turned out to be a lot harder than that. But, I had a set of clients, and just naturally my focus started becoming more on the basic security of, small business security, antivirus backup recovery, disaster resiliency, set up early cloud backup to my own data center kind of environment. And then turned one of my clients that was a small healthcare provider, they were becoming my larger clients, and they ended up just becoming my full-time job. And I had shut down the shop that I had started, and I was doing everything there. The only IT guy, so soup to nuts, VMware design and resiliency and SAN configuration, but focusing more and more on the security side. I was just getting more interested in the type of compliance, and it was just kind of, given the different projects, that's kind of where I wanted to spend my time. And so after a certain amount of time there, I decided to seek out just a security focus role. And so I came here as a security engineer under the previous CISO, who was the first CISO here. That escalated quicker than anticipated. I was there for about 6 months, and she kind of came and decided that I was going to be her succession plan for when she left, 2-3 years down the road. And she wanted to start getting me up to speed and on some of those operations. She left 8 months later, so a little faster than planned. And then, it was a leap, but one that was, I liked the challenge that took me into a role. And for a while I was doing double duty. I was doing my old duties and the new stuff, but that has mostly settled down over the intervening years.
Interesting.
So that's what brought me into this role. And, it's been challenging and interesting. It's joining a community that is, in healthcare security has been an experience where you have a lot of people to lean on and good people to commiserate with when you're sharing your challenges, and everybody shares. So, it's a role I've been enjoying most days. And then, as far as, how, what we're doing here, I don't think it's too much different than you see in most healthcare organizations, except it can be a little more challenging because we have the academic and we have the research and we have the clinical all in that same environment. So, serving different masters can provide some of its own challenges around, balancing and enabling the researchers to be flexible and access the services they need while making sure that the PHI is secure, the environment is secure, because patient care is number one.
And this is like an IRB research function.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. And how are you working that into your overall security process? Because obviously I'm assuming you're exchanging data.
Yep.
The parties that are involved in the research. How are you managing that process?
We interface with legal and privacy teams. We work to make sure that wherever we're giving our data, it's third party vetting to make sure that they're following the appropriate controls and that we have the assurance that, high level of assurance that our data is going to be kept secure. Contracts are in place, BAAs, liability, cyber insurance, but, I've always taken the stance of those are good things to have. They help mitigate the overall impact. But from a patient privacy perspective, regardless of how much you're going to be reimbursed for it, the records are just as breached, right? So you haven't protected the privacy. So, we focus a lot on that due diligence and, looking at the architecture for exchanges, a lot of which have been standardized at this point through, various platforms, which kind of makes things a little bit easier. We don't have to keep reviewing everything as its own entity.
And are you an Epic shop or?
No, we are not.
Okay. And when you look out over the next 12, 24 months, what are some of the top priorities on your plate?
Number one has really been that I'm trying to change the way to communicate and involve the business in risk.
Mm.
One of the, especially when I first started the job, I would talk about risk in very technical terms, about what's on our risk register, about, not having, a hole in our DLP or a configuration that wasn't secure. But that just goes over the heads of leadership. And then, supportively nod their heads and expect me to take care of it and, do our best. What I've been focusing on the past 6 months, and this is an evolving process, is really working with the business. So first of all, risk is the intersection of impact and likelihood. So my line lately has been, my team is proficient in determining the likelihood of something happening, but we're not the best at determining the impact, right? And where it's the scale is. So instead of us doing kind of a thumb in the air, where do we think it falls in that matrix? We've been bringing in the business very heavily. So like privacy, compliance, and legal. You tell me what level of number of records is a medium impact, catastrophic impact, et cetera. So that we're all talking the same language when we come back with risk. And then we're following better governance because we're creating tolerances about where we need review when the risk level hits a certain threshold. And we're doing that with like financial. You tell me what the dollar values are for each of these different criteria, with catastrophic essentially being something that jeopardizes our ability to operate. And we're doing it with intellectual property and reputation, which has been more challenging to quantify, and also with clinical impact, right? Like from a senior executive level, looking at, you tell us if this particular system meets the criteria that an outage would be a catastrophic impact. Obviously the EHR qualifies as that. But that lets us talk more about the risk on an equal footing because we've gotten that buy-in and everybody is kind of aware of what we mean when something is a medium risk or a medium high risk, et cetera. The other part of what we're doing that I've been really focusing on is really talking to senior leaders and executives about the high level business risks and some of the technical risks. And we've revamped our risk register to take, I think, we got about 40 business risks, like loss of clinical availability due to ransomware, breach of privacy due to ransomware or external attacker in general, breach of privacy due to internal threat, loss of the data center because of fire or flood, right? Environmental risks and everything. And then we're taking our risk register and we're tying each of those technical findings to one or more of those business risks, and then mapping that out on a risk matrix to the, what do we feel the risk of all of these business issues are that they care most about. And then we can talk about the technical things we're doing to address them. Right. So, for example, loss of PHI to a third party breach, Change Healthcare, Blackbaud a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's up in the high dark red because you look at a 5-year period, which is kind of how we look at it. It's pretty much guaranteed to happen. And the impact as defined by the business of the loss of that number of records is a high impact. So, when we talk about that being high up in the upper right corner, they understand that it's not an arbitrary decision on my department's part. And then we can say, well, okay, what can we do to reduce that? If any, and same thing with ransomware. And then what we're doing is then we're taking the various information security projects that we're working on now or proposing for the near future. And we map that. So you can actually see in the dashboards that we built, this project touches these risks that are distributed, hopefully usually in the, higher risk areas because those are the ones we want to address. So giving them that feedback and that hopefully clear understanding of what we're trying to do on an annual basis with our projects.
Got it. And where does the adoption of AI fit within your priorities and your scope today?
It's something we're actively working. We're trying to create best practices around how to use it, and not just from a cyber perspective, but from a data quality perspective, a bias perspective, copyright and the legal aspects of it. And how do we manage that? How do we make it effective and enabling for the business as we've, sampled certain AI technologies that are more, consumer focused? We're looking at it in clinical areas about, how it can improve physician productivity and patient experience, but all of these, we're from the security side, we're creating our standard expectations around it. A lot of these things, especially when it's cloud-based or SaaS-based, so much of it is just the same due diligence you would usually do.
Right.
But then it's what do you go above and beyond with when it's, okay, how are you taking prompt data and integrating that into what can be returned and making sure that access control is properly respected when you're returning data. And then when we're talking about internally developed projects, what are our expectations there? And ideally I'd like to say, okay, well, make sure that your model's not subject to model poisoning attacks. But, we're not quite at the point where we even know what does that mean in an AI world. We can be providing them guidance as to what you have to do to an AI model to make it resilient to that.
Yeah.
So learning curve.
And how are you handling governance? Have you set up a governance process committee policy yet?
Yeah, almost. It's all. We've had some other stuff in place and checkpoints and conversations, but we're working on for getting that last piece of formality and try.
Yeah, a lot of folks are on that journey today. So when you think about your current job and what you do, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this role? What are you most passionate about?
I go back to that game programming that was my original dream. I found out during one of my projects in grad school, I am horrible at 3D modeling and animation. So I probably would have, I would have hired out a good chunk of it. But I miss some of the programming days from my earlier experiences. That was always very rewarding to face a puzzle and get to work it through to completion and see the finished product, which is harder in security because we're never done.
Yes.
You can fit it. We do wrap particular projects, but when I look at the big picture of what I'm trying to accomplish, it's just, there's the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah. Interesting. What games did you play? I assume you're a child of the 80s or?
Yes.
Yeah. So what were your favorite video games?
Going back to Nintendo, I think Zelda 2 was one of my favorites. Moving into high school and early college, I worked at an internet cafe. So this was before everybody had, computers and games were not networked for internet connectivity. Moves by net shim in place for those. So my friend and I would get together at night after the cafe closed and we'd play Duke Nukem, Descent, and just, kill hours doing those while I'm running back and forth, getting people sodas and coffees and various snacks and keeping the register going for my boss. So he was always willing to let us play late with that.
I love the game. I don't know if you remember Tempest.
Yep.
And Defender. You remember Defender? This.
Oh, Tempest was that one where you go around the circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They start from the bottom and come up and
Yeah. I think that was the first vector graphics.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and Defender, the spaceship, and that would kind of just go on a linear.
I don't remember Defender, so, but I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
And then that first one where it was animation, Dragon Slayer, I think it was called.
Oh yeah. Dragon Slayer. Tron was one of my other favorites in the Deadly Discs.
Oh yeah.
Arcade. I was
Nice.
good at it, but I liked it.
Nice. Yeah. And we talked about D&D earlier. Were you multi-class?
No, I was always, I was typically the wizard.
The wizard. Oh, okay, good.
I spent way too much time on my prop spell book that had, for my one character that was going through the campaign. And, I had up all the pages and I burnt the edges. So it looked like I had been thrown in a fire. It was just, nerdtastic.
Yeah. Those are the good old days.
When I had time for that stuff.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
I think the easy stuff is hard and the hard stuff is hard too. But, so much is, from that technical perspective, and I faced this early on when I first started in this role, and we needed to do a much wider MFA deployment than we had at the time. And from a technical perspective, it's, you flip a switch, you put everybody in the right Active Directory group and
You're done.
And you're done. Or, maybe you're nice about it and you send people instructions on how to enroll.
Yeah.
If you're feeling generous, but
Until the uprising.
yeah. So it's going into these things saying, yeah, technically it's easy, but it's culture change.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, again, we're heavy research. And so the researchers are saying, well, we don't deal with PHI. It's mouse data. Why do we have to? Yeah, but you're in our email system, business email compromise. You're on our network, and, So getting that buy-in throughout the organization was, a bit of a culture change for some of the key players. Making sure that, again, you just, from that technical perspective, you're just that from the engineering background I have, I kind of just was so used to just being in control of it, right? You turn it on and make it work, and you make it work as easy as possible, and it's smooth sailing from there. But, when you're dealing with that large organization with people at different skill levels, you got to make sure that, the supporting infrastructure is there, right? Like the service desk understands how they have to support and handle calls that are going to come in, and, what's the rate of enrollment before you're overwhelming the system and the people that are supporting it, right? So, yeah, it was that early mindset that it's just, flip the switch and you're done.
Yeah, it's great. Hardest lesson in your career?
Recently it's just like the fragility of the ecosystem. You look at change, you look at CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
It's not coming from where you expect it, right? We're defending our borders and, our perimeter and our applications and you look at Kronos a few years ago, right? Yeah. You're aware of the impact of third party and supply chain, but Kronos didn't affect the entire healthcare ecosystem the way Change Healthcare did.
Right.
Right. And was focused on that one industry, and then CrowdStrike, the tool that you have to prevent outages was the tool that created the outage.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Then you just start having to look at everything with a different lens and start weighing, what's the risk of bringing on this new tool? We evaluated the other endpoint tool agents that we have on the system from a security perspective, and could they do that? And how we're re-rolling them out and staging upgrades? Are we doing the best way? And so we made some changes there. So, it's just how fragile the system, the entire environment can be.
Yeah, that was amazing to see the CrowdStrike debacle, because one would expect, after so many years of rolling out client software and having the scars, that we would have, still been faced with an outage of that scale and magnitude.
Right. But when you're doing your evaluation for software, how many people are asking if it's operating at ring zero and then, bringing in?
They're not. Nobody is. No,
Yeah.
I mean, they will now, but yeah. Or what are your, how do you roll out upgrades?
Right.
do you big bang? Do you stagger them? Like how are you?
Well, we were N-1, right? With the sensor, we were N-1. So we figured we're covered, right? Because we're looking at that piece of it. I mean, same thing with when, semantic or, whatever your endpoint agent of choice was before, we never questioned the impact of bad definition you could have.
That's right. All right. I've got to ask this question. This is the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. What's the riskiest thing you've ever done, Adam?
And the problem with that one is I'm so tame.
I don't believe it. Everyone says that. And then I hear like these stories like, oh, wait, that's pretty risky.
So, okay. I don't know if this qualifies as risky. I'll tell it anyways. Getting drunk on stage during a play and then taking a bow and almost falling off stage.
I think that's just stupid.
Well, the story behind it, it made me do it.
Okay. Who made you do it?
The stage crew.
They did. Oh, were you part of the theater group or?
Yeah, I was part of a theater.
Oh, awesome.
We were doing a series of one-act plays.
Oh, cool.
One that I was in, it starts off with me and my father sitting at like a kitchen table, sharing a bottle of wine, talking about my relationship problems with my wife. And then halfway through, the lights go down on synth dim. You can still, and we would pantomime talking. And then the scene moves over to my wife and my mother talking, first
having the same type of conversation.
So the last night of the show, we go to drink our wine and it's actual wine. They gave us a bottle of wine. And so the lights come down. They're like, we're in the middle of the scene and we realize, we got to hide it. But as soon as the lights come down, I say to my partner on that, we're finishing this bottle. So we're just downing it glass after glass because we've only got a few minutes while the other half of the scene we're just downing this. And I thought it was fine. And we were the last one. So right after that was curtain calls. And that almost did not go well.
Almost a little bit of a mosh pit stage dive. Nice. Well, that's pretty risky, I guess. Not so much stupid. I'm glad you told the story.
The best I got. I'm sorry.
Never no whitewater raft. I mean, you worked on a nuke sub, right? Didn't you work on like a warfare?
I didn't get to go out. I went on a couple subs.
Yeah.
For configuration. I almost had to get flown out to one that was at sea and having technical issues.
They must airlift you, right? Drop you down. Yeah. Yep. That's pretty cool.
But in the end, I didn't have to do it. They fixed the problem. But it would have been interesting. But at the same time, like if they had to dive, like I'm cut off for weeks or how.
Yeah, you're in a sub.
The mission's
pretty risky. Pretty risky.
But it didn't pan out, so I don't have any good stories.
Oh, well, that's pretty funny. That's good. All right. I'll ask you this question. You probably are steeped in the finer parts of culture, music, and movies. What are your, let's see, Desert Island top 5 records or movies you'd bring with you?
Can I bring books?
You can bring books, sure, yeah.
All right. Ender's Game.
Oh, okay. Now you're talking my language.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle.
Oh, Robert Persing. Beautiful. Yep. One of my favorite books.
I'd bring The Matrix.
Oh, how about Cryptonomicon?
That one I don't know.
Oh, Neil Stephenson. You have to read that.
Okay.
You're a cyber guy, and
I know the Cuckoo's Egg.
Oh no, this is fantastic. This is one of the it's a historical novel. So if you like historical novels, they bring in these 3 time periods together, and it's about cryptography. So
all right, I'm in.
It's a great. It's big, but it's a good book.
Okay, it'll keep me busy.
Yeah, let me know what you think.
Okay, I will.
Awesome. So no music.
Oh, I'm pretty. Margaritaville, the Jimmy Buffett best of, but Ocean by John Butler. Like I don't know if you know that one. But that's my zen. That's my amp up music.
Oh, okay. I'll check it out. John Butler.
Yeah.
Nice.
Pushing is the song.
Okay, cool. Any advice, last question, any advice to folks coming out of school, they want to break into cyber, or they want to break into healthcare?
Dabble in a lot of things. Some of this is my bias, I think, coming in from that general technologist perspective, right? Where I've done programming, I've done Active Directory administration, I've done networking to a certain level, VMware administration, including site recovery and replication. All of those have contributed in some way to, my contribution to security.
Mm-hmm.
Even the stuff that I'm not good at anymore, or haven't kept up with, just understanding the jargon, understanding the ecosystem, understanding some of those big picture challenges that the, infrastructure people are dealing with on a daily basis. All of that I think has value. I think having that broad understanding and, not just I've done pen testing and coming through just having done, those kinds of tasks, but not understanding how it's going to interact with Active Directory or some of the other aspects. I think that broad view is very valuable.
Yeah, I love that.
It's harder to get nowadays.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I love that though. It's be a multi-class technical infrastructure and cybersecurity, right?
Yep. No, it definitely comes in handy. I mean, you didn't used to have people that graduated cybersecurity. You did IT and then you specialized.
Right.
And I understand why we're moving away from that model because there's so much that's necessary. But, even if you don't have that as part of your formal training, build a lab, play around.
Yeah. And that third dimension is that you brought it up earlier is understand the business and understand how to communicate to the business. Yeah, which is great. All right. That's a great way to end. Adam, thank you very much. This is Ed Gaudet from the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. And if you're on the front lines protecting patient safety and delivering patient care, remember to stay vigilant because risk never sleeps.